Good evening from the Rooster Inn Observatory. In this short tutorial, I want to show you my workflow if I choose to process images above and beyond what DWARF 2 or what Seestar would give me. This example uses the DWARF 2. Assuming we're connected to DWARF, you go to Camera Settings and select MTP Mode. Once you have MTP mode selected, then and I have DWARF here in station mode, then that will allow me to connect to DWARF just by putting double slash DWARF, and there it is, DWARF 2. I can look at the SD card, and within that SD card, I can see raw files with all the fits in them. It's interesting to look at the shots info JSON file that tells you what the target was. In this case, it was manual, how many shots taken, the declination and right ascension, exposure and gain. The other thing that you find here are going to be the darks. And here are the dark files. As you look at the darks, you will find for the various gains, all exposure 15 seconds. And within each of these files, there are only 3, within each of the folders, there are 3 files, fits that were taken that will show you how much noise there is. These are all the hot pixels on my sensor, a whole bunch of greens, red and blues. And DWARF automatically subtracts these from every frame that it takes. So we're going to have to do that manually in this case. So from that file access, I was able to pull out the darks, and I did something external to the DWARF, namely I created a master dark. I used Deep Sky Stacker to create a master dark here, combining the 3 files and gain 80 into one file. And it is a TIFF file. You're not going to see much there. It's going to look very dark. But that's what I'm going to use when it comes to stacking the images. I decided to use AstroSurface. That is my preferred go-to file, whether it is stacking planets or the moon or the sun, or in this case, deep sky objects. Open a sequence of files, and that will allow us to look at in this case, I'm going to look at M8, the Lagoon Nebula. This one did not take too many files, actually. It was only 74. So I'm going to select, open the list, 75 files. And here, remember, it's the GR, green-red bearing in DWARF 2, and then register Deep Sky. It is asking for darks, so I'm going to go to the dark, DWARF, where did I put the darks? And there is the master dark that I created. I have loaded it. At this point, it's straightforward. You set the reference, and it picks 20 stars by default, and it uses that as a reference. I can select the output format. I'd like to go with TIFF, and then process. And it is going to stack what it considers the best selection of among the 75 frames. It is a reasonably fast process of stacking. I have done it with 1,000 frames, and it is good. It is reasonably fast. It is done. So now I can go back to the folder. Now there's an aligned folder in there with the TIFF that was created. This is the stack TIFF. I'd like to open it with GIMP. And there is the file. If you don't want to work too hard, you can just go to Levels and select Auto Input Levels. Ta-da, we're done. Or if you want to do it manually, you can work on stretching the histogram and doing due diligence with contrast and saturation and exposure. I'm going to stop here. This is reasonably good. There are still some hot pixels that have straggled in there. I'm going to save it, export. I'm going to export it as TIFF. No compression, and I'll show you why later. And we're done with this one. Now, for those of you who are interested in comparing the image that DWARF came up with versus the image that we came up with by stacking all the frames, this was DWARF's, and this is what we got. DWARF, our image. This one is a little bit overexposed, a little bit more color. As I said, we could have toyed with the histogram stretching, contrast, exposure all day long. But what I want to show you next is some people like to clean up the image by removing all the stars so they can focus on looking at the nebulosity. To do that, I'm going to use StarNet++. And with StarNet++, I can operate here on I've downloaded StarNet, and there's nothing to install actually. It is a command line prompt, and RGB StarNet++. I'm just going to look at the local file here. And this is the one that came off MQTIFF, and M8Q Starless. It identifies how many tiles it wants to work on, and this is real time. It's going to take about a minute to strip all the stars from the image. I had already done the star stripping from the original image that came out of DWARF. So we'll be able to compare all four pictures: DWARF with stars, my own stacking with stars and dwarf without stars, and my own stack without stars. I am not advocating by any means to take the stars off your pictures, but it is an interesting option if you like to do that. While we're here, let me take you quickly to the home page of AstroSurface in case you wish to download it. It is astrosurface.com, and by the same token, StarNet Astro is the official page for StarNet++ software. We are 90% finished. And there is the file. So let's look at the 4. This is the original image that DWARF gave us from its own stacking. This is the one that I got. That is a dwarf image without stars. And this is my image without stars. Obviously, dwarf's image did much better during the star stripping. And the only lesson I take from this is that dwarf does a reasonably good job. It would have taken me the better part of an hour tinkering with histogram stretching, with exposure, with pulling lines on the graph to come even close to dwarf. And this is the image without any stars. So that's it for now. I hope you find this video useful. We'll talk to you later.